Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey, health junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I have Adam Ross. He is a registered dietitian. He's a badass. Like, the guy is just real when it comes to food. And boy, are we going to break down some stuff today. We're going to talk about taking responsibility for your health and your nutrition and what goes in your mouth. And not in like a jerky way. We're just going to straight up be us. Yeah, we're going to be real. And here's what I'm going to say. I didn't fully admit that in the last couple months, I've really started to not want to cook at all anymore. I feel done with it. Funny, since I live on property where we grow a whole bunch of food, and now I have a freezer sitting next to us with a whole bunch of food in it, and I have canned a whole bunch of things. We have a ton of things still popping off in the garden. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to cook this stuff. So I'm going to have to figure that out, right? I've got to own that responsibility of what's going on in my brain and be like, all right, instead of fully imploding and cooking and hating it, I'm going to maybe find somebody to help me out to cook. My husband's doing a great job. Maybe I can entice him to keep doing a great job. Or maybe we find someone to help us out with some of the meal prep. And this is me being completely real with you guys, because let's face it, we get a point in life where we don't really want to cook. Sometimes we just want to eat popcorn and, call it dinner. And sometimes you might want to be like me and eat squirrel-like and have nuts and seeds and call it good. Well, knowing that about yourself is half the battle. And Adam's going to talk all about that today in the podcast, where, hey, you can eat out every stinking meal as long as you know your macros and you're going to good quality restaurants. Hey, who does that not help feel a little bit more free about eating better and meeting macros and getting healthier? What, I can eat out and you're not going to take all these foods away from me? What? Yeah. So it's a different thought process compared to you got to eat keto, you got to eat carnivore, you got to eat this, you got to eat that. And the longer I've been in the game, the more I realize the more we are looking at the basics, the better this is for us. We've come way out of balance when it comes to basic nutrition, basic fundamentals for health, and focusing on problems and not looking at what's a realistic solution. Because I could easily be I don't want to cook and I'm going to eat popcorn every night for dinner. And what's going to happen? I'm going to gain weight. I could also be I'm just not going to eat too. And I know for a lot of folks, grabbing protein bars and convenience food and going by fast food or getting pizza because they don't want to cook are other solutions, but they're solutions that can mess with our metabolism. So why not find solutions that are beneficial for our metabolism and offset a little cash flow there? Because it's probably going to cost a couple $100 a week to have someone cook for you. And it's probably going to cost a couple $100 of money to do certain convenience things that help you when it comes to figuring out what works with you, not what works for the carnivore, the keto, the fasting plan. So why not invest in yourself in this way? Make it easier for you to eat in a way that is healthy for your body. I don't know. Let's reintroduce you to Adam Ross and let's talk about it a little bit. All right, let's dive into the podcast. Hey, Health Junkies. I have Adam Ross back on, and I had to bring him on because he emailed the most epic email out to his readers that I couldn't say no to. And I also was like, please come talk about this. And it had to do with his hard stance on wellness and your approach to your own wellness and being real with yourself on it. So Adam, thanks for coming back on and chatting with me about this topic.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Yeah, I had a blast the first one, and I know we're going to have a good time the second time around for sure.
No doubt, no doubt. And it's so funny how we've given away our power for our health. We've given away our power for a lot of things. And now we're giving away our power for our own responsibility when it comes to our health. As much as I would love to be there are 85 reasons why someone may have gained weight or 85 million reasons for why someone may be chronically, stressed or ill, we do have to take some responsibility because no one is going to fix it like you do. Would you elaborate on that? Because this responsibility thing is so huge.
Yeah, no, I think, my big thing, and I want to preface this by saying I don't want to sound I'm trying not to sound like a huge asshole during this podcast, but it is kind of kind of going to have to get real. And I think in a lot of cases, a lot of conversations I find myself having with people, and, I think it's very just common nature for human beings, right, is that we're amazing at identifying problems, but we are not great at moving beyond the problem identification and into the solution piece, right? So we know, right, like the deck is not stacked in our favor right now as human beings in terms of our society and our health, right? There's a lot of trash foods out there, there's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of ways we can go wrong, but it's also never been any easier for us to go the right direction either. I don't think. So that was kind of my thing, right? Is like trying to take a hard stance on the understanding that, yeah, hey, like there's a million ways where you can go wrong and it's all very easily accessible, but there's a million ways where we can go right. But we just have to find that solution, and we need to think beyond the problem. We need to stop letting the problem control us. Whenever I speak to people, I ask them what's wrong. They can tell me 25 things that are wrong with them. When I ask them if they've ever thought beyond what's wrong and how to fix it, you typically get silence there, right? Or we start to get a lot of excuses built up, these baked in excuses that we all do. We all have them, you have them, I have them. We're all human beings. We all, look for the easy way out. But that's kind of my take on it, right? Is that we can't keep taking the easy way out because it's sending us in a terrible direction. Like metabolic health in the country is probably the worst it's ever been. And I think people are sicker and, more stressed and fatter and, all of the above than they've ever been. And it's not a great trajectory that we're on, right? So at some point it becomes on us, right? It becomes on me, it becomes on you to take care of our own health and our own situation and find a way around all of these problems that we continue to find ourselves running into every day.
I think the first thing you mentioned that I've been kind of thinking about a lot is even in the medical field, in the nutrition field, in any health field, we do focus so much on the problem more than we're looking at, solutions and trying to get the mind out of that, especially when it's tied into weight loss. Because I found even in my own weight being obsessed, like, oh, I just can't get any weight off. I just can't get any weight off. And I would say probably 60% of my phone calls with women throughout the week have to do with I can't get the weight off. Not, well, I've tried this or done that. You seeing the same thing, I'm guessing, here in terms of this.
Yeah, 100%, right? And it's always, we go very outcome oriented as opposed to process oriented, and again, these are all conversations I find myself having often is, we're very hyper focused on the outcome. And yet, if you kind of sat back and you took a deep and hard look and just held yourself like very accountable, do your actions, every day, every week, every month add up to the outcome that you're trying to achieve, right? So the thing that I'm typically having conversations a lot with people is like, yes, I know you want to lose 5 pounds, you want to lose 10 pounds. We all do, right? You want to look better, you want to feel better, you want to function better in some way or another. We all do. So like, what have your actions been over, X amount of time, and do they align with the outcome that you're trying to achieve, right? And I think if we really, dig down deep, and this is where we have to get a little uncomfortable and we have to kind of call ourselves on our bullshit sometimes and try to understand, hey, like, what have I done that has been in alignment? What have I done that has been out of alignment? And what is, the weight of those two things, right? Unfortunately, especially if we're trying to make change, the actions that are in alignment with your goals have to heavily, heavily outweigh the actions that are not in alignment with your goals. I do think as you get closer to achieving your ideal body composition, your ideal health, your ideal outcome, you actually do get a little more leeway or a little bit more leash. But in the moment, when you're really going after a lofty goal or something that's, significant change for you, you do have to, be heavily weighed in the favor of like your actions have to align with your goals, right? And it's like, hey, life happens. There's always going to be things. We all have 1,000 excuses every day as to why we can't do the things that we know we need to do. But unfortunately, like, I always say, like, the body just doesn't care. The body does not care if you had a stressful day, if you traveled, if you were out late with friends, if someone peer pressured you, if your boss was mean to you. The body does not care. It doesn't. So for you to stop at the fast food restaurant on the way home or whatever it might be and drown your sorrows in whatever it might be, right? Alcohol or excessive calories or, treats or snacks. I get it. It serves a purpose, but it doesn't serve the purpose of you achieving your goals, and your body literally doesn't care, right? It's just adding up the calories, and it's, stacking up the nutrients, whether it's, micronutrients or macronutrients that you're putting into it. And it's just rolling with what goes into it, right? So I get it. We all have the emotional side of everything, and we all have stressors and things in our lives. again, if we have a grand goal, the actions have to align and the excuses have to start to drop away at some point. Because again, it's like, you get kind of, it's kind of cliche, but you have your, uh, your success or your excuses kind of in two ways, right?
So sage advice, because I think so many people, we know what we need to do. I interviewed someone once that wrote a book that says, I know I need to do, I just can't do
Yeah,
it. It's a great
exactly.
title. I'm like, this freaking genius. And like,
Yeah.
even myself, like, we wouldn't have overweight nutritionists, right? We wouldn't have overweight doctors. We wouldn't have overweight medical staff if it was just real simple, right? Like, all of us know what to do. It's just the leading up to it. And like you're saying, these actions have to outweigh things. We have to like set up life for success. And I came onto this podcast saying I'm only dusting my face off because I just ate some popcorn and I had some salt in it and I needed my electrolytes. I mean, and my carb boost, right? And like, why did I need that? Well, because I didn't have enough for breakfast, clearly,
Yeah.
right? And my lunch probably didn't have enough protein in it. And so I decided I needed a snack. And so there's these things going like, okay, well, I didn't set myself up for enough meal planning on this level. So, do you feel like one of the biggest behaviors or habits that we do find ourselves not keeping up with and then kind of like diverting the responsibility is the busyness, the busy factor, and like needing to meal prep, needing a shop cook, all those things?
I think the big thing is like the proactivity, right? Like I just think like we're not proactive enough, right? Most people, myself included in a lot of cases, are not proactive enough in terms of like taking control of their day and controlling their outcome. I come from a sports background, right? I always tell everybody or anyone who comes from a sports background or whether you're in business or whatever it might be, it's like you don't show up to work without an idea of what you're going to do today at work, or you're just going to sit at your desk and twiddle your thumbs, or you're going to do random things here, random things there, and you won't achieve anything. I never showed up to a single hockey game without having some kind of a game plan. We had reviewed the team we were playing. We knew what our game plan was. We knew the plays we were trying to run. We had a strategy, right? So right now we just lack strategy, and so many people are just kind of flying by the seat of their pants. You wake up in the morning, you quickly like run down to the pantry, whatever you see first, you grab, or you might be just hitting a Starbucks or whatever on the way to work. You don't know, you didn't bring anything to work with you. You don't know what you're having for lunch. You're just going to see what everybody else is doing. You don't know what you're doing beyond, that for snacks or dinners or anything that night. And this is, I think, where we end up kind of losing the battle, right? Is that like there's not enough proactivity, there's not enough planning. And, if we can just get ahead of ourselves, and again, like I don't even like, I'm not a meal prep guy. Like I'm not sitting there for 4 hours on a Sunday, prepping out my whole week and planning it ahead. That's not what I enjoy. That's not my style. But I do know what I'm going to do after I get off this podcast with you. I know what I'm going to have for a snack. I know what I'm going to have for dinner tonight. By the time I go to bed tonight, I'll know what I'm going to do for breakfast and lunch tomorrow so that I have, myself in a situation where I can be successful. Does it take a little bit of planning and prioritization and time? Absolutely it does. But again, just like anything, like just like the routine that you may be in right now, of just flying by the seat of your pants and running around and just letting the cards fall where they may, if you start to create a routine and a structure around planning your days, it becomes a lot easier. Everything's always hardest, especially habit change, right? It's like it's always hardest at the beginning. Like to start to do this is not simple. And this is where now the excuses start to come in, right? Oh, well, I have this or I have that, or this was hard, or this was a long day, or that. It's like, that's great. I get it. Like, I'm not saying that you didn't have a hard day. I'm not saying you didn't have a long day. I'm just saying if you're not prepared for what you're going to do the next meal or tomorrow, you're probably going to end up staying stuck in the same position and feeling the way you're feeling right now. So, all of the things outside of your health and your wellness and your nutrition aside, you still got to prioritize and get the job done here, or else you're going to stay exactly where you are. Right. So I think, again, it's not like an empathetic thing. It's just like a reality, right? It's like, hey, if you got a deadline at work today by 5 p.m., like you got to get the job done by 5, right? And it's like if you know that, lunch is coming at 12 and you don't know what you're going to do, you haven't given it some thought, even an hour ahead, like, hey, where am I going to go for lunch today? Just a little bit of planning ahead can go a really long way. So my big thing is proactivity. I think we just lack that structure and that proactivity that can, create a ton of success, but people kind of, I think forget about it or just skip it over.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. I would say myself too. I've seen it, because we become like the mind's busy on other things. The next thing you know, it's 7:30 at night, and you're like, oh, we don't even have any meat in the house.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
those kind of things. So I find it fascinating that you're like, yeah, I don't know, I don't meal prep, because I think a lot of people are convinced that anybody who's a dietitian is like a master, like whiz meal prepping like all the time. So people might be like, Adam, you don't meal prep? Like, how do you even like what? How do you
Yeah.
prep for the day then? What do you like? How do you tell yourself like this is what I'm going to eat and stick with it? That's the other kicker, not diverting from the plan of what you set up for yourself. How do you do it?
Yeah. So I guess I do cheat a little bit. Right now,
Mhm.
I pay for a meal delivery service, and that's how I get my lunch. But I will say that I mean, that's within the last year, right? I'm 38 years old. So, I mean, I went without the meal delivery service for 37 and a half of them, right? So I do think if you can outsource it, obviously it's going to be the best, right? Because it just makes life simple. And again, it's time saver, all these things. So if you have the means to do it, I do think getting into some kind of like a meal delivery service and just kind of, having that done for you is really simple. But, before, and even on days where we don't have that, we typically just plan ahead at dinners, right? So we do cook dinner at night, whether it's usually nothing fancy on the weekdays. Me and my wife are both very busy. I'm going into the city. I typically don't get home until 7:45, 8 o'clock most nights. My wife is very busy with her work right now, and she, forgets, honestly, even know what time it is half the nights I walk in the door, and and we don't have dinner yet. So we keep things very simple. We keep meals, easily. Basically, we do a lot of like ground meats, and we do things like that where we can like batch prep stuff. So we'll cook like a big pot of rice, and it'll feed us for the week. Or we'll cook like 2 pounds of ground beef, and that'll be dinner tonight. That'll be lunch tomorrow, kind of thing, right? So we do a little bit of planning ahead there. And again, like we're just proactive. We just get ahead of ourselves a little bit. So even on a night where if I didn't have a meal prep or if we didn't have dinner, I would absolutely be planning what I need to do for tomorrow, whether that's like cook something ahead or like in my case, I always tell people just like you need a plan A, B, C, right? So plan A would be okay, you're not doing meal prep, but you cook extra dinner every night so that you can bring it for lunch, right? So that would be say plan A. Plan B is that all right, maybe you don't have anything planned. But you do know that there's a select couple of restaurants or whatever near your house or near your work or whatever where you can get a couple of good meals and you kind of just rely on those, right? So I'm lucky I'm in New York City. I got plenty of options, but I'm also super picky. So I know that there's a couple places right around my office where if I don't have lunch on a specific day, I know exactly where I'm going. I'm going to Oxford Cafe. I'm doing a salad with double protein, with an egg, with sweet potato, with hot sauce on the side. Like I can tell you exact right. And it wouldn't matter like where I was. That would be the structure of the meal that I'm trying to consume. But I've planned ahead. I've thought ahead. I've done the proactive work to get myself set up with these options. And then again, I'm just kind of relentless in my approach of like, I'm not making an excuse, right? Like if I got to wait an extra couple hours to get to Oxford because I didn't bring my lunch this day and I got to sit in the office and be a little bit hungry for a couple hours until I get a minute to get out, like I will do that, right? So I do think like there's also that level of accountability where like we always have our plan A, our plan B, our plan C, and then plan C obviously would be like convenience, right? So like I also like I don't plan and prep everything I do. Like my snack every day is 2 scoops of whey protein, some kind of a protein bar processed, but fine from an ingredient standpoint, and maybe a handful of raw nuts or whatever, right? So it's like it's not like I'm chefing up a meal every time I eat or whatever. But again, I know that I have a high protein, 50 grams of whey protein. I know that I've got maybe 30 to 50 grams of carbohydrate based on the bars that I'm eating, and I've got some healthy fats with my nuts, and I'm kind of controlling my intake that way, right? So it's just I'm just intentional, and I think if people can be very intentional about what they're doing, then that allows us to find the foods and the meals and stuff that fit that structure. Again, I really do think it's just like the more intentional you get, the more you prioritize it, the more you start to, find solutions instead of just like, oh, hey, it's a busy day. I'll just grab whatever, is laying around the office or whatever's going on, right? You just hold yourself to a little bit of a higher standard than that and you kind of make it happen. And, for lack of a better term, it's like the job just has to kind of get done.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I hear you saying like you're responsible for what you put in your mouth, right? No one's holding you down and putting anything else in. So if you do on autopilot walk to somewhere that isn't as healthy, like you got to call yourself out. And speaking of autopilot, this is where I think a lot of people are on. And they don't even realize like where these things are coming in. And it's, it's like over before, like they already ate the food, they already went there before they realize
Yep.
like, oh crap, I did like 4 times this week.
Yep.
Starbucks
Yep.
drive through, dang it. Do you
Yep.
see that quite a bit too?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Just a lot of, yeah, like mindless, again, like habitual routine based things, right? Like the biggest believer that like, human beings we're habit and routine based. Whatever is the habit that we're in and the routine that we're in, that's what we do, right? So if you go through the Starbucks drive through one time and that was super simple and you got a coffee and a egg bite thing and you really liked it, that's going to become very habitual and, it's an easy routine to kind of double down on. So yeah, and I do think like again, I keep bringing up like office or maybe it's like if you work from home, the kitchen's right there, habitually and just routine based. A lot of times we're just kind of walking around, grabbing whatever snacks are available, a little bit of grazing here and there, maybe not really prioritizing meals as much because we have been grazing a little bit throughout the day. So then food quality's down a little bit, macronutrient control's down a little bit. You lose track, right? It's like, oh yeah, a few handfuls of nuts here, a couple bars there, bag of popcorn there, maybe had a whatever to drink, and like it just gets away, right? Just like anything that we don't focus on and we're not super mindful of, it just kind of gets away from us, right? And I know this because I've got the food side of things figured out okay, but the rest of things in my life aren't exactly like perfect, right? So I totally understand where not having the best routines and habits around certain things can be a burden or whatever or unhelpful in the long run. So I think that's kind of what it is, right? It's just a lack of mindfulness, and then it's just these routines and these patterns that we follow all day long that just aren't beneficial to the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course you mentioned protein powder and you mentioned your protein bar. I'm curious, what brand do you use? What do you like? Like what's your fave?
Yeah, so right now I'm using Legion because my wife has like a deal with them, so we buy the Legion. Before that, I was buying Dymatize ISO 100, just a whey protein isolate. It was like a decent. I like the taste, and the price was decent for the quality. From a what I recommend for like my coaching clients and the people that I see, I really like Legion. It's a really good brand. Really like Pro Mix. So from like a no added ingredients and no artificial ingredients, no fillers. They've got a really nice report on, pesticides and heavy metals and things like that. They test their products heavily. So I really like ProMix for that. That's a great brand. And then from a protein standpoint, I really like Transparent Labs as well. It's the highest protein per scoop that I've seen. It's like 28 grams per scoop of a nice high quality whey protein, minimal ingredients, those types of things. So yeah, for the whey protein, that's typically the three brands that I recommend and kind of gravitate toward.
Awesome. Awesome. I think it's kind of what everyone's looking for, at least in my practice. They're like, well, what brand do you use? What do you like? Suggestions and there's nothing worse than spending a bunch of money on a tub of protein powder and it tasting like crap.
Yeah.
It's the worst. It's the worst. And at this day and age, a lot of us are getting to the point where, yeah, the meal prep thing is overwhelming. And I'm happy to hear you say that you invested in a food service because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people feel like they're failing if they don't meal prep. I feel like that a lot,
A hundred,
even myself.
I, 100%. No, I agree. Everybody I've ever spoken to who's like thinking of like dialing in their nutrition is like, so should I meal prep every Sunday? I'm like, you don't have to. Like, and like, I don't know. To me, it's like I'm a very, very convenience based eater. Like, I'm about as like basic as a dude as you're gonna find. Like, if I can't make it in 15 minutes, there's no way I'm cooking it. Like literally, if I can't grill it on a barbecue or it's not ready in 15 minutes, like I probably am not doing it, right? So again, it just becomes like, okay, that's me. I understand that about myself. So what do I need to do to set myself up for success, knowing that about myself, right? And I think that's what we need to understand. And this is where people fail like really fast, right? Is like everyone thinks it's like it's got to be that 4 hour meal prep on a Sunday. It's got to be that fancy Instagram thing where everything gets portioned into the Tupperware and you stack it up all nice in the fridge. And but the reality is that by Tuesday or Wednesday, you're burnt out on that meal. The food's starting to get old now. You're not enjoying it, and then you end up probably wasting the second half of it, and then that's where we find ourselves at the Starbucks and whatever. So again, I think it's like it's to each their own here, right? If you're a meal prep person and you love to cook, maybe like go ahead and do your meal prep. If you're not, we just need to find an additional strategy. And I'm not even opposed to, like, if you want to go out for lunch every day, great, go out for lunch. Just find a meal that is aligned with your goals and your calorie needs, right? And macronutrient needs, and just double down on that. Like, if you told me, hey, and I mean, right now I'm working at a concierge medical service in the city, pretty high end clientele. These people are not, they're busy. Like, they are very busy, and they, believe me, they're not packing a lunch, right? So it's not about that. It's just about finding what is the meal structure that's going to fit your goals, and then how are you going to achieve that, however you want to do so. So like I said, it doesn't have to be meal prep, and it can be ordering out. It can be plan B. It can be plan C type of options. We just have to be willing to, again, like, find the foods that align with the goals and help us achieve the goal. And as long as they're moving us in the direction, then that's all we need, And I think, like, that's the other piece of the puzzle is, like, everybody's looking for, like, the perfect thing, right? And it's like, oh, well, meal prep's perfect. I'll have the perfect macros, and I'll only eat this, and I won't eat any snacks. And it's like, that falls off a cliff, very quickly. I don't think that's what it's about, right? It's about, like, again, finding the right structure that you can stick with, that you can be consistent with. And all you got to do is be moving in the right direction, right? So it's like, even on the weeks where you're not perfect, if you feel like you made strides toward, the greater goal up here, then great. Double down on that, learn from the positives, and let's bring them forward into the next week, and then figure out what didn't work, right? Maybe that was like, hey, I prepped meals this week. I hated them by Thursday. And then I went out for food Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay, so let's figure out what we need to do. Like, Monday through Wednesday, maybe you do prep half your week, knowing that Monday through Wednesday you can do meal prep. But Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we better have something else in play, right? So maybe that is, like, on Wednesday night, I cook a big dinner, I have extra food for, Thursday, and then I make that plan for the remainder of the week. So again, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it won't be perfect. And knowing that it won't be perfect, I think, is even better, because then that allows us to, again, just be a little bit more realistic with ourselves, get behind the curtain of, like, okay, where do I actually need to start making some changes, and then go after that, right? And the thing that we need to do, I think it just kind of leads back to that initial comment of, like, it's just basic problem solving. Like, it's so basic. And it's like, I tell everybody, it's like, food is the furthest thing from rocket science. It's like, you know exactly what needs to go in your mouth. You know exactly what doesn't need to go in your mouth. And you need to make sure more of the stuff that needs to go in goes in, and less of the stuff that shouldn't go in goes in. And it's not a 100 and 0, right? It's like maybe a, 85, 15, 90, 10. But again, it's just very basic problem solving skills. But again, I think we just get overwhelmed, and we get ahead of ourselves, and we don't, I guess, we kind of confuse ourselves or talk ourselves out of even doing good.
I think we overcomplicate like no other. And I mean, I see this in myself too, because I've done many different fitness plans, many different nutrition fitness plans, just to see, like, what would happen. And at the end of the day, I will find that, one, yes, I get sick of the food. And some people will tell me, like, look, I can eat the same thing every day. And I'm like, bless you for being able to do that, because I
Yeah,
cannot do that.
I can do that. I'm that guy. I could eat the same thing every day, all day.
I feel like you
And
talked
I
about
do.
that. You were eating like chicken or something, just chicken and something else in your training, weren't you? Something like that. It was like super basic.
Yeah, that's my meal prep. I buy, so the delivery service we use is great. They got a ton of variety. The food is really good. But I only order one meal. I order the simple chicken, which is chicken, brown rice, and spinach. Because for me, again, it's like I always tell everybody, just live and learn. Like, I have lived and learned enough. Like, I've made enough mistakes down this road over the last 20 years that I've been doing it, that I know exactly what I need to do to be successful. And I know exactly what derails me, right? So, like, I don't need the decision fatigue. It actually stresses me out when I have, like, two different meals and I'm looking at them. I'm like, oh, this one's got these macros, that one's got those macros. What do I do? I don't want that. I don't need it. I don't need the decision. I don't need I got enough things going on in my brain. Like, I don't care. So, it's like, I've basically kind of come to the conclusion that, like, I just do the exact same thing for breakfast, lunch, and my afternoon snack every single day, because those meals are more functional for me. Those are my meals that I just want to eat well. So those work for in terms of what I'm looking for right now. And then at dinner we branch out a little bit, right? And we'll do something that's, it's like a whatever homemade meal or whatever it is, and there's a little bit of variety there and stuff. So I get my variety at night. But again, just from a decision fatigue, standpoint, and just making sure that, again, it's just like habit, routine. I don't want to think about it. I just do the same thing every day because I just find that's what's easiest.
I give you credit, but I think a lot of people, a lot of people are cool with it. Some people are like, "Oh my god, I can really do that," because in the natural medicine space, there was this thing that was like, "Oh, you got to rotate your foods every 4 days because
Yeah.
otherwise you have food sensitivity." But I found that a lot of people don't, and they're fine. So,
Yeah, agreed. And like, I'm not saying if you have a nutrient poor diet, right? Like if the diet was like an egg bite from Starbucks in the morning, a couple Oreos for lunch, a bag of popcorn in the middle of the afternoon, it's still keeping it a calorie deficit. You could do it. You could hit those weight goals probably if you had a yogurt in the morning and a couple cookies at lunch and a bag of popcorn. You're probably sitting at 500 calories for the day right there. But again, from an energy level standpoint, from a nutrient intake standpoint, nourishment standpoint, I mean, whatever, like muscle protein synthesis, all the things, right? Like all of the functional things that we'd want to, work toward. It's not going to be enough, right? So I think like that's the thing to understand, right? Is like, okay, is your diet actually providing you the nutritional value that you need to get from it, right? And then that's kind of like the other piece of the puzzle. So I'm okay with people doing similar things every day or the same things every day, but I am also very clear that like, yeah, it's going to be a good idea to branch out, when you have an opportunity at dinners or on the weekends or whatever. Make sure you're getting variability in, your plant-based foods and things like that, so that we get, different polyphenols and different antioxidants and fibers and all this stuff, right? So I'm not saying just to kind of, put yourself into this box where you eat the same thing every day and run the risk of like nutrient deficiencies. But I do think that, if our diet's decently high quality, I don't see a big issue with repetition.
cool, cool. Yeah, I mean, so. What I'm getting at here is, and why I'm journaling about these certain things is if we look at it as a whole, it takes a lot of pressure off people to know that, like, okay, if my meal is nutrient balanced and it's the same thing every day, that's not so bad. And if I'm getting some of the, variety in the evening or weekends or whatnot, now it's like more doable and we can take more responsibility, because I feel like we give away our responsibility when we get overwhelmed with the situation.
Yeah, 100%. I think that is the thing, right? Is yeah, as soon as things get hard, we do like we kind of default to like what's easiest, right? Or we default to that like level of where we feel comfort. So no, totally. And I think that is the important thing for everybody to know is like, again, like you said, like you're not like me and I'm not like you. And, a lot of people don't want to eat the same foods every day or whatever. But I really do think it just comes down to like, again, get very, specific about who you are, what you like, and what foods kind of fuel your goals best. And then we just try to implement those things. If you need more variety, then you know that, you might have to prioritize a little bit more time in the kitchen or a little bit more creativity on the meals that you're ordering out or whatever it might be. I don't want to give that much time to my nutrition. So I have just found this workaround where I just do the same thing. But again, it's to each their own, right? And I think like that's the thing that, and again, it's like you look at all the research and you look at all the information out there, and it always kind of comes back to the idea that, the best diet is something that's obviously highly nutrient dense and the one that you enjoy and you can stick to the longest. It's not the perfect macros, it's not the highest protein intake, it's not, the lowest carb or whatever. It's something that obviously suits your needs, fits your goals, fits your lifestyle, that you can stick with. So I think that's like the big thing is, I think that's kind of like the message I'm trying to hammer home here is that, yeah, there's no one perfect approach. It is to each their own, but it's up to you as the individual to understand what it is that you need to succeed, and you need to prioritize that, and you need to be okay with the prioritization of that, which can, it takes work. It's not simple, right? It does take time. It can be a pain in the ass. It is a little bit inconvenient at times. But again, for myself and for a lot of the people that I work with, the inconvenience of planning your meals and planning your days a little bit is far better than the inconvenience of being fat, sick, tired, sluggish, and wondering what's wrong. Or again, knowing what's wrong and dealing with the mental stress of not understanding how to fix it. So I think it's one of those things where, yeah, I mean, everything's work, right? It just depends where you want to put the work in, and everything's uncomfortable. It just depends where you want to be uncomfortable. Yeah, that's kind of I don't know, the way I try to conceptualize it for myself and kind of, I guess relay it to my people as well.
Well, you've you've just unlocked a lot of little bombs there that if people just kind of put them into perspective, and I'm going to try to reiterate them as best possible here. Like, one, really, we're putting our own pressure on ourselves to try to put a box of what nutrition should be, when in reality, the better we know ourselves, what we want, what we like, what we can do, like what's a pain in the butt and what's not, we use that information, we create a plan that we can stick with. I'm like, genius. Sounds really simple, but we get in our ways, but we get in our ways. But you're what you're saying, like, and this is back to that responsibility thing. Like, the better we know ourselves and are willing to be like, admit, like, for me, I can't live the world without popcorn. I really like it. I just can't. And so I have to think of how that, that and nuts and seeds. And here's a fun story. So I've seen many different, like I had mentioned before, many different folks for nutrition and fitness. And a lot of the times what'll happen is they'll be like, well, you can't eat nuts or seeds anymore. Or you can't eat, you cannot have any popcorn anymore because it's too high glycemic. Because my two issues of where I like to overeat are fat and popcorn. I mean, and basically nuts and popcorn, part squirrel.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
because I have squirrel tendencies and, I've been told like I can't eat these things at all. And I think for a lot of people being told they can't eat something, then it's like, well, that's all I want. So,
Yep.
and that's what I
Yep.
like. So what do I do? So help me through my madness here, Adam. Let's do a little bit of like spot. What would you tell someone like that, like me, that's like, well, I've been told to cut out these things, but I really like them and they feel good to me. And they're not bad. They're not junk foods. I'm making my own popcorn,
Yeah.
and nuts and seeds are raw and whatever. So like for the healthy folks out there that have these things that they've been told, no, stop eating them.
Yeah, just I wouldn't, right? And I think like you just got to understand the hierarchy of like how this works from like a physiological process of like, calories are going to be the king, protein is going to be slightly below that in terms of, where we're going to get the most benefits, nutrient density below that or beyond that, I guess. And then after that, it doesn't really matter, you just got to understand the variables. So if I know that nuts are 9 calories per gram, like they're high calorie. So if I'm going to sit around and have 4 handfuls of nuts a day, I might be getting 800 calories worth of nuts that aren't filling me up. I actually did this with a person yesterday. He said he was eating about 70 almonds a day. It worked out to 500 calories, and it was like less than 100 grams of food from a weight standpoint, right? So what we decided is like, hey, what else do you like? He's like, I like yogurt, I like oatmeal, I like berries, I like fruit, whatever. So I'm like, okay, this is not going to be the same macronutrient structure, but what we ended up doing was building him another 500 calorie snack that was like 500 grams of food as opposed to 86 grams of food or whatever it was, right? So like it's just kind of understanding like what you're working with and what's providing what. I think the big thing is like there's just a knowledge deficit when it comes to nutrition, because unfortunately it's not something that we learn like as kids in school or whatever, and there's so much just junk online, right? So at the end of the day, like if you have a goal of a specific body composition, your calories have to be in alignment with that goal and your protein has to be in alignment with that goal. You're going to do better if your nutrient quality is also in alignment with that goal, right? Because generally higher nutrient dense foods are going to be those like lower calorie foods. So then we can get a lot of volume, we can get a lot of nutrients like, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, polyphenols, fibers, all the buzzwords, right? And we can go about it that way. And then on the foods that we really like to enjoy, we just need to learn how to input them into the diet under the guidelines of like, okay, how many calories and how much protein are you getting, right? If you want to eat if you've got a 1,500 calorie intake for the day and you want to eat 1,000 calories worth of nuts, you're probably not going to be able to achieve your protein needs and other things like that, right? So it's like, okay, maybe we need to cut the nuts in half, and then we need to focus on, more protein, more high volume foods to kind of fill the remainder, that whatever 1,100 calories that we have left, right? So, I mean, that's kind of the way I go about it. Is it's largely just understanding like what each of these things that you want to put into your diet is providing from a macronutrient standpoint. And then just like a puzzle, you're just kind of putting the puzzle pieces together. So it's like, again, I'll just use the 1,500 calories. I want 1,500 calories and I want 150 grams of protein. Those two things get prioritized above all else. And then after that, I don't really care that much what you do. If you like popcorn, have popcorn. If you like nuts, have nuts. If you like both, have both. But just find a way to get 150 grams of protein, keep your calories around that 1,500 calorie mark. And then what you fill underneath those needs is not near as important as, those primary, I guess, like drivers of your success, right? So that's kind of the way I go about it when I plan meals or, plan diets out with people is, yeah, we prioritize what we need to prioritize. And then after that, if you want to fill with a treat once in a while, or you want to, whatever, you like your nuts or your seeds or your popcorn, then we absolutely put it in, but it just needs to fit the structure.
Gotcha. I think I never thought about it. The weight, like the 70 almond weight versus like something where I think a lot of people don't realize that that might be why they're still hungry too
100%.
after eating.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. There's some research around like human beings eating for volume as well, right? So like about 3 to 5 pounds of food a day is pretty typical for a human being. So again, if I'm trying to eat 3 pounds of almonds, I'm going to be looking at, I don't know, I'm just going to take a guess, 3,000 calories, 5,000 calories. I don't know. Right. If I'm going to try to eat 3 pounds of, spinach and grilled chicken and, fruits and berries and things like that, it's going to be a lot of food. Right. So that's the thing, is that like food volume, like, again, I've done this as well, where I build out, hey, like here's a day that's more processed, again, it's like all these processed foods, right? Because they're extremely light. There's no water, there's no fiber, there's no nutrition. So if I'm trying to hit 3 pounds of processed foods, I can probably run me 3,000 calories to do it, right? If I'm trying to hit 3 pounds of whole foods that are more nutrient dense, I can do it in 1,500 calories, right? And again, it's just, we go with these options that are obviously higher nutrient density, lower in calories. And then those are also typically like these lower volume, lower weight foods. So again, they move the needle in a bigger way, right? So that's another thing I do with people, is especially people that are dealing with a lot of hunger. And this is a way that I'm able to drive people feeling like they're eating more than they've ever eaten, but still eating lower calories than they've ever eaten, is that, right? Like we just implement more of these high volume foods. And like even understanding that 6 ounces of potato is probably 150 calories less than 6 ounces of rice. Like it makes a difference in the long run, right? So that's where having that little bit of like a nutrition knowledge, or another thing is like people avoiding fruit, right? Well, it's like, okay, well, fruit is highly nutrient dense and it's mostly water, right? So you're going to eat a cup of berries and it's going to run you less than 100 calories. Who's eating that many berries? Like, that's filling, so it's like we try to find things like that, and we try to, again, plug those in, because that's going to fill you up for a lot less calories than whatever almonds and bags of popcorn and whatever cookies and other like ultra processed foods and stuff, right? So that's another area that I typically try to maximize with people.
That's just, it's like I just having you explain it kind of hits it harder for me to be like, dude, we need to think about this. Like, this is really like taking back, some of the density and the fillingness of the food, because so many people are mowing through like chips or popcorn and all that. It's light. Of course you can stick it in. That's why they created that. I mean,
Yeah,
why they even
exactly.
said you can't eat just one Lay's chips, because of course you can't. You can't. No one can, because it's so light. And I don't think a lot of people really think about that density per se. I was driving to work the other day and I was eating, like, we have a whole bunch of fresh peas in our garden, and I had like got them out of the husk. I don't know what you call it. I
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
eat the husk. I
The
chew for
pod.
days and that thing's still stuck. That pod. There we go. English. Apparently not my first language today. But yeah, those pods, like, you can't really chew them. I tried to eat them because I thought, well, maybe it'd be like sugar snap peas, right? Those things are like, I was chewing for days, and I'm like, and they're still stuck in my teeth, and I'm like, this is gross. But the peas,
Yeah,
I ate the peas compared to like, what I was normally eating for breakfast is like my side. I was so full through the peas, I couldn't even eat anything else. I'm like,
yeah. It's crazy, right? And it'll be maybe 100 calories, but again, it's high fiber. There's a lot of water in there. And then the other thing about that too is like, again, things that are leading to satiety, right? So like chewing, like even that, right? Like the more you're chewing, the more it's triggering like a hunger, or sorry, a satiety cue, right? So like that's the reason why we do these like high volume meals, is they're fiber, they're higher in water, they're lower in calories, but and they move the needle a lot faster from a satiety standpoint with a much lower calorie count.
so cool. I feel like I learn something every time I talk to you, because it's just like things that like you're like, I should know this. I probably learned at some point and was just threw it out, because
Oh,
we're
that's it.
also thinking brainwashed. We're brainwashed with like, we gotta do carnivore, we gotta do keto, we gotta fast, we gotta do this, we gotta do that, and like, where's the freaking basic fundamental nutrition? It's out the damn window from way back
Yep.
in the day. Way back.
Well, yeah, that's the other problem. It's just there's just too much out there. There's just there's so much information flying around everywhere, and yeah, it's everything's conflicting, and you never know what's actually, real or not, or what's high level. And again, it's like, people quoting studies and things like that, but is the study even valid? Is it even a well done study? Was it in a human being? Like, there's, again, it's like, there's a lot of just a lot of information, right? It's just information overload. And again, it's like typically the crazier it is, the more people want to think like, oh, well, maybe that's me, right? Like, maybe my metabolism's broken. Like maybe I can't process carbohydrates or whatever. And it's like, we start kind of putting ourselves in these boxes and thinking that, there's something wrong with us or that we're broken or whatever, and in a lot of cases, I think, and this is the cool thing about obviously what you're doing, and, obviously, now with at the health service that I work at, like have access to every bit of blood work and labs and scans and everything that's available. I think in most cases people are kind of making assumptions about themselves that a lot of times aren't true. And again, it just adds more to that heaviness, that weight of like, there's something wrong with me. And well, like, why even bother? Why even try? If I'm one of these people with a broken metabolism, what am I even doing? But like, meanwhile, we really haven't even attempted to do the fundamental stuff. And I don't think it's for a lack of caring or a lack, like, I just think it's like a literal like lack of understanding of like, nutrition science and how it impacts your physiology and things like that. Because again, it's tricky, and there's a million things that sound really, really cool or, really polarizing online. But at the end of the day, like I still am like the hugest believer that, the fundamental stuff at the end of the day is going to be the stuff that has the biggest impact, right? And we start there. We start with the fundamental stuff. And then if you do need to, whatever, eat less nuts because you're a little bit intolerant, like that'll be further down the line. But I can tell you what, like taking nuts out of the diet, if they're not helping create a calorie deficit, is probably not going to have a huge impact on what it is that you're trying to achieve. Again, it's not something that you don't do or you don't consider, but I also think it's like one of these things where, like, if we're going to get hyper specific on things, like let's have the fundamental underlying structure figured out first. And then once that structure we know is locked in, then again, we can start seeking those outside things that might be contributory to other things, whether that's like whatever, like your digestive issues or whatever it might be, right? So I think a lot of stuff would get cleaned up by just honestly just cleaning up the food.
And that's where I definitely wanted to round out this podcast. I mean, we're taking responsibility for what's going on the basics with ourselves, what's going on with our habits, routines, behaviors. And then, yes, we can look into like, is it my thyroid? Is it, a food sensitivity? Do I need
Yeah.
hormones? And honestly, folks, I'm gonna tell you from my experience, it's the basics. More often than not, it's the basics, unless there's some things to tweak.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, and I'm fortunate too because like I work with cardiologists, endocrinologists, functional integrative health specialists, women's health specialists, some of the best doctors on the planet. And like I can agree with you on that. Where, like, yes, there are underlying issues for certain people, but also the recommendations of the fundamentals is never going to change. Yes, you may have a little bit of hypothyroid and some medication is absolutely going to help that, but your endocrinologist or your functional medicine practitioner or specialist is not going to recommend that you eat a bunch of Oreos and Starbucks coffees and stuff like that throughout the day, while you manage your thyroid, right? The recommendation is going to be, and it doesn't matter, what kind of illness or what issues you're having, the recommendations are still going to be for diet and lifestyle adjustments. And that's all already coming back to those fundamentals. Are we getting adequate calories for our goal or any kind of an issue that you're having? Are we getting adequate protein, to support our immune system and to support our, muscle protein synthesis and satiety and weight and all of these things, right? Are we getting adequate micronutrition in the diet from vitamins and minerals? And then are we getting enough fiber and antioxidants? And beyond that, that's in most cases from what I can find, the recommendations don't change a lot beyond that. Obviously some things, trigger specific recommendations, whether it's, specific macronutrients, how much protein, how much carbs, how much fats and things like that, if we've got real illness. But beyond that, again, like I said, it's not going to be have more Pop Tarts and more popcorn and more ice creams. It's never going to be that. Why don't we start there? Like I think it's like, yeah, let's start with the obvious, right? And then, yeah, absolutely, go do the testing, go see if there's something underlying. Especially if it is a thyroid or something, you're going to want to know about it. Absolutely. It's not gonna hurt you to get that piece of the puzzle figured out as well. But again, if you're listening to this and you're like always hungry or always tired or always lethargic or whatever, it's like maybe ask yourself, like, how much water did you drink today? Like,
Yeah.
did you put any quality food in your body? Like, what time did you go to bed last night? Did you sleep through the night? Like, all of these things are going to be really impactful, and you can change them right now, today, as opposed to waiting to get the doctor and go to the scan and go get the blood tests and get the blood work back and call the doctor back and get the medication or whatever it might be. That's, we could call that a month process, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to like, hey, right now, like I can go eat a quality meal. I can like de-stress a little bit. I can put my phone down. I can like, get a good night's sleep. Like, there's a lot of things. I can go out and get like some exercise in, right? I can move more. I can drink half my body weight in ounces of water every day, right? And like guarantee in between while you're trying to, get in to see these doctors and stuff, I'll guarantee you start feeling better if you start, kind of hammering down on all those fundamentals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've heard it here, guys. We gotta be real with ourselves and honest with ourselves. Hammer down the basics first, and then move from there. So, Adam, we gotta tell folks how you're working with them, because I have a feeling some folks might want to reach out to you, because we've had folks from the podcast reach out. So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about like what your programs are like right now, how folks can work with you, because this
Yeah.
is helpful to get the basics down.
Absolutely, yeah, no, and yeah, it was lucky. I had a couple people reach out after the last podcast, and yeah, things were great with them. Awesome people that listen. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of like what I offer, it is like fully like personalized, customized nutrition, and I would call it like lifestyle stuff, right? Like I try to focus on nutrition and lifestyle for sure. So yeah, that would be coming. I mean, obviously setting up a meeting, we'll kind of review, where your diet's currently at. And then kind of like everything I just spoke about here over the last hour is like, it really comes down to like the customization and personalization of everything. So, we customize and personalize calorie and macro nutrient recommendations. And then after that, it's largely just about kind of rolling with the punches and trying to understand like what exactly that you need from a lifestyle perspective and a, structure perspective that's going to fit your needs, and I'm kind of working through that whole thing on the daily, which is, again, that's where it becomes a little bit more of a read and react situation, right? So it's really just largely, I say it's like, we get the initial structure down in terms of like, what do we need dietarily? And then after that, it just becomes all about the strategy and how we implement. So, and yeah, I guess, for people to contact me, I mean, if you want to follow me online, Instagram is primarily where I'm at. It's nutrition coach, all one word, _Adam. And from within there, if you click like the links that I have in my bio, then we can get you onto my email list. And like I put out one email every Sunday, always obviously nutrition and performance and health and function related. And then my wife, who's a physical therapist, she puts one out about like fitness and like the body and pain and rehabilitation and everything like that every Thursday. So yeah, we got our newsletters that go out Thursday and Sunday. And then if anybody wants to work personally, then obviously you can just reach out through email or through social or whatever it is. And I guess like website too is arnutrition.net. So
Great stuff, guys. Like, you do not miss out. Like, I love their emails. I read their emails. That's how I got Adam on.
yeah,
Again,
that's why I'm here.
like,
Yeah, I forgot.
why he's here, in addition to working with some of my folks. And I was like, I really want him to come back and chat, because, your info is real. It's realistic. It's good. I read them, and they're not, it's realistic. Like I said, it's not like crazy advice and trendy advice. It's real. And you're kind of breaking down a lot of the trendy stuff too, which I like as well.
Yeah, I try. I don't know. I feel like I'm a pretty like simple guy. I need to understand things in simple terms. So yeah, it's like, as much as I love the science and all that stuff, is like, yeah, largely I just try to understand that myself and then figure out how I can, put it into understandable and relatable terms for everybody else that's just trying to work through this thing every day, right? And I think that's the big thing to understand, is that's all we're trying to do. It's like we're just trying to work through this every day and do a little bit better. And that's, I guess like the topic of this, right, is like, taking responsibility for your own health. And I think that's it, right? It's like the more we can keep this top of mind, and the more we can kind of challenge ourselves to take this on and stop letting, everybody else and every ad and every food company and every bit of stress or whatever kind of, control us and control how we, look, feel, and function. I think that's kind of the message I'm trying to get across, right? And then with those emails and with that newsletter, that's what it's all about, is just trying to kind of bust through a lot of the noise and help people understand that it doesn't have to be as hard as in most cases we think it is. And yeah, just try to put it in a, no pun intended, a digestible form here for people to utilize.
I like it. I like it in a digestible form. I like everything in a digestible form. Thank you so much for coming back on, humoring me to chat today, and just dropping a bunch of bombs on us today, because I'm listening to stuff and I'm like, yes, that's right. Yes. The food weight thing. I'm going to be thinking about that for the rest of the day. That one I'm going to look at because, I'm going to talk about the popcorn, guys. So, nevertheless, Adam will bring you back on probably here sometime in the new year. And heck, thank you again. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me on. It's always a blast.
We always have a good time. We always do. Hey, fellow health junkie. Thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.